Okay, well, let's return to a familiar topic. And I was trying to figure out, so mindset. Let's talk about mindset again. And, sometimes I think about topics we've had or people that we've had on to talk about different discussion points. And, mindset is certainly woven through all of those things. And, it's definitely worth repeating. And I was listening to the All Things Life and Real Estate podcast last week, which is Linda McKissick and Dana Gentry. And they had on as guests Josh Shepler and Heath Green. Now, they're in the property management space, so they were just kind of talking about, they've sold their business, they're talking about their success. And then they got talking about mindset. And Josh said something that just was like cement to me. You're married to your mindset till death do you part. You're married to your mindset till death do you part. It's like, wow, you are. Doesn't mean that you don't change your mindset, but whatever's thinking in your brain, what you're processing, and it's what you're processing inside. It's not what's coming out outside, but it's what you're processing and how you're processing this inside that matters. That's really what drives you or pulls you back. That's what gives you confidence or pulls you back. And that whole idea of mindset just really said to me how important that is. I was listening to the Millionaire Real Estate Agent podcast last week with Mel Robbins, who said, believing in yourself is not enough. You have to prove it to yourself. And again, it's that mindset thing, because that's not external, that's internal. You've got to believe in yourself so that you can have the confidence, you got to prove it to yourself on the outside.
Two of my favorite people in totally different worlds. One is John Danaher. He's the most famous jiu-jitsu coach of all time, best jiu-jitsu coach of all time. And then Alex Hormozi, who's like a marketing guru, but like has built a bunch of successful businesses and now is in acquisition of businesses. They both talk about how confidence has nothing to do with what you say to yourself or like you can't just manifest confidence like I'm great, I'm awesome. If they both talk about how confidence comes from a proven track record, that if you see success in the gym or you see success at an appointment, then you have even if it's just a little bit, just something to stand on, then the next time you go in and you do well again, then you stand that on top of the last one, and maybe instead of a sliver of success, it's a win, it's a victory, or it's a sale or whatever it is. And then you add those two together and then you stand on top of those, you go in even more confident to the next one, and your confidence could disappear in an instant. You could have a negative thing happen, but you have to get back to, okay, am I that one instance or am I these three others that I've now stacked on top of each other, plus what I learned from, the failure mixed in there, that your track record is really where your confidence comes from. And I do think it's, good to have positive affirmations, and that's just going to add to your confidence, but you can't just fake, confidence. You can't just fake success. And I think that's really, because that's kind of contrary to like what most of the woo-woo, affirmations, I think affirmations are great, but they don't go far without some success.
Yeah, I agree. I do think that there is a shift. I think I can feel a shift coming from, whatever you tell yourself you'll be, to this is reality. And you're going to have thoughts that are not great. And the question is, how do you flush them?
Totally.
What do you flush them with, to get you back on track?
Right.
Building those successes, like you say. And I just think about, in my own mind, I would never talk to somebody else like I talk to myself.
Totally.
It's amazing. I use, I keep my language clean.
Yeah.
So I'm not using any foul language with myself. Right. But to me, calling myself an idiot.
Yeah.
Right. I would never tell somebody they were an idiot. Never would say that. And, that word gets thrown around and myself quite often. You fool! Why did you do that?
Right.
How could you let that happen? Whether it's spilling something on the counter, or it's saying the wrong thing to somebody, or not figuring out how to solve a problem. It's just it's what happens, and like you say, it's a matter of how you control that process. That's most important. So I was also listening to Ed Milet, and he said something that was interesting, and I think it definitely relates to mindset. When is your favorite time of day? Is it when you get up in the morning, or is it when you go to bed? And for people who go to bed and feel like that's the best time of the day, it might be because they're going to go to bed and forget about life. They're going to put it away. They're done. Peace and tranquility maybe, hopefully, will come as they sleep. If it's in the morning, it's because you're ready to go. I get to do all these things. You're not waking up, you're not snoozing the alarm for 20 times, or whatever. I don't want to get up. I don't want to have to do this. It's a matter of, I'm alive. I get to do these things today. Even if they're things I don't want to do, how am I gonna? I'm ready to go. I thought that was that is good. Pretty interesting.
I think the more you're working on something that you care about, the more excited you are when you wake up in the morning. If you're working a job you don't really care about or don't really like, it's just a means to an end. I think that's where most people find themselves snoozing or not being excited to get up in the morning, because I've felt both. I mean, I'm sure you have too. We all have.
Yeah.
So the more you are, excited about what you're going to do that day, the more creative it is, or the more it's aligned with your strengths or purpose, and the work you're doing is important, changing the world or your community or impacting your family in a significant way. And I think it's important to not see it as there's only one way to wake up in the morning excited. You have to be solving a creative problem. It's like, no, you could be doing the most boring thing ever. However, you've tied it to, some kind of why of providing for your family or giving the next generation opportunities that you didn't have, or something like that. Because I've watched people do really, really boring things from my perspective, and they're fired up. And it's because they're changing their world in some way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. So I think it's important to not compare yourself to other people and, oh, this person's, making YouTube videos on, 40-foot yachts, whatever. It's like, okay, well, they might hate their life, versus someone else who's, filling holes, asphalt holes, but they're like fired up, they're building a team, they're, impacting their community, they're doing some service work on the side, their families changed because they started their own business, and it's and sons or and family on the side, it just...
Or they're just in love with themselves and all the opportunities and things around them. They've got perspective on life that's not down in the weeds. It's on the greater things.
Right. Yeah.
Much greater things.
Yeah. Yeah. Marion and I were talking about gratitude the other day, and she was saying how grateful she is for her life and her family, and, where did she get lucky and where did she earn or choose certain things? And I said, you get lucky with the family you're born into. That's, like, to me, where luck really starts. You can change your destiny after that, but that's kind of where you were born and what zip code and who your parents are. That's kind of where luck really originates. But she was saying how grateful she is for the family she's born into. She's got great parents, great siblings. And I said, gratitude is such a powerful emotion. I was like, I can't think of something that makes me happier or feel more full than being grateful. Whether it's grateful for a friend or grateful for my origins or grateful for food on my table or, all the opportunities I've had. And I really can't think of something that makes me feel better than being grateful. And I know, like, a lot of successful people are like, start with gratitude journal, start with gratitude. And you hear that and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, what? But you can see why. I mean, if you're happy and fired up, you're going to be more productive.
Well, and you can be grateful for the not so great things too. You can be grateful that you've got a tragedy or an obstacle or something, because you just flip that around and say, I'm grateful for the opportunity to have this to deal with, because I am going to come out on the other end of this better, stronger, whatever it happens to be, more confident. You got to flip that around. I'm not saying that's easy.
Right.
And some things that happen in life are, very profound and very tragic. Yet, you seek other people who have done that. I mean, it's so easy to see, people who have come from the worst of odds. Malcolm Gladwell, in his book, The Tipping Point, I believe it is, his whole book is based on people who, super successful. It starts off with David and Goliath. That's the first example. And, they didn't necessarily start with the greatest of things, but an event happened in their life that changed them significantly.
Right.
That they took forward as a learning lesson.
Yeah. Your interview with Mac.
Yeah.
The other day was number 38, I think, was, a testament to that,
Yeah.
Been through the ringer.
Yeah.
But still full of gratitude and perspective and hope.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That was amazing. And I think back to sort of that, how you get up in the morning kind of feeling. And it's not just that when you get up in the morning, it's an all day thing, but basically how are you going to start your day to carry your day through? And I go back to when I think about how I've found reasons to get up and be productive, because like you say, there are different seasons where you have that sense that, I'm just on fire. And that can last for long periods of time. I think, you look at seasons of life, when I was younger, there were different reasons. When I had a few kids, that was a whole new reason. And those can last longer. Now, the season that I'm in right now, I think those reasons to get up and get going are all there. However, there's fewer, I don't know if it's distractions or what it is, that the seasons seem to be shorter and shorter. I mean, I go back. So for me, the most the most significant time for me getting up in the morning was after my accident. I mean, if I opened my eyes from a nap, I was like, oh, great. I'm still alive. So that was significant. When the alarm would go off, it's been almost 10 years now. When the alarm would go off for years after, I'm like, let's go. I got to get going right now. And sure, that has kind of, softened some. And I will always have that in the back of my mind. And yet I need to find and keep focusing on other reasons to get up, because I can, oh, I'm tired. I didn't get good sleep last night. Maybe I should go back to bed. And if anybody listens to Mel Robbins, I strongly recommend that they do. And it's not just a female audience that she has, she's got a mixed audience. But, she does such a good job of talking about this voice in your head, oh, you don't really need to get up. Why do you want to do that? It's just in a tone that's like, oh, yeah, that's the guy or the girl that's saying, yeah, you don't really need to do that. You ought to go back to bed. You didn't get much sleep last night. And she talked about false confidence as well as something that we all get stuck in. False confidence is when, let's say, I'm going to work out tomorrow. I'm all set. My daily routine is, I get up, shave, I'm going to work out tomorrow morning. However, tonight, I'm going to do something that's going to keep me up later at night. So I'm going to be tired. I'm not going to be as rested, but I'm going to get up tomorrow morning first thing. So I go out, I do something, I stay out later, I go to bed, I wake up in the morning. Oh, Rick, you're probably out of sleep. You didn't get a good night's sleep last night. And that just affects your whole day. So if you instead get up and just do the hard thing, you feel so much better. You really are so much more energized. And you put that on a set of scales. I got up, I did what I said I was going to do. I didn't get up. I slept. I got the sleep that I really didn't sleep that much. I just kind of laid there. So you start putting those scales against one another, and it's like, much better here.
Mhm.
Much better.
Getting up.
Getting up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's just an example of, sort of following a plan, but also the little things that add up over time to help create more discipline, more action. It's all about action. It's all about doing. And, you just have to do it. And, so much of life, I think, again, I think there's a shift coming back because we're hearing it a lot more. We're hearing more about do your job. And now it's kind of do the hard things. And felt like for a long time, it was like nothing hard, be easy, no confrontation, take it slow and steady and find your way. When in fact, you got to do hard things, and they're hard things. They're not easy things. Sometimes those are just conversations that you have to have. And, I'm guilty. I like to have everybody be comfortable and moving things along and saying things just the right way. And there are times when it's like, nope, this has got to be a conversation. I'm going to do the very best that I can to deliver the message, like I want it to be.
You're talking about like a fierce conversation.
A fierce conversation, yeah. An uncomfortable, a hard conversation where you don't necessarily, it's the chances of it being well received are pretty slim.
Yeah. Yeah.
However, the delivery makes all the difference in the world.
Totally. The best example I can think of fierce conversation is from Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. He tells a story of, it might have been him or someone going into a factory, and there's this no smoking policy, and the guy kept telling him, no smoking, you can't smoke in here, and they just didn't listen. They didn't care, and they knew they wouldn't get fired for it. So what he did was he walked up to him with 2 really nice cigars, and he gave each one of them a cigar and said, hey, just want to let you know, can't smoke in here. There's no smoking in here. But I hope you guys enjoy these cigars. They're really nice, Cuban, whatever. And never smoked in there again.
Really?
It was just like the way, a little bit of, love, a little bit of tough love at the same time. And I think that can make the biggest difference. They talk about like compliment sandwiches, and I think that can get can water down the message and can leave the person doing the math of, okay, you said I was good here, you said I need to change here, and you said I was good here. Which is it? Or I know it's negative and I'm not even hearing the compliments.
Yeah. That's a very delicate line to walk. And I know that in my earlier days, I definitely there was a lot more bread on that sandwich than there was meat. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that was unfair to the people that I was talking to.
Right. Because you were you weren't giving enough compliment, or you weren't giving them enough hard truths?
I was worried too much about harming them. And I was worried probably too much about how they would look at me, and not being deliberate enough in my delivery of the content.
I've always appreciated people that told me I was doing something wrong respectfully. I've appreciated that so much more than I've appreciated encouragement. Maybe it's because I haven't had a shortage of encouragement in my life. I think it's different for different people. When someone says like, hey, you're doing this wrong and you should do it this way or that, or do this instead. And it's like, it's something that, they kind of had to go out on a limb. They might lose me as a friend, or, or what I might think of them differently. And they took that chance because they cared enough about me, not just just blind criticism. Those are the people I'm like, I need you in my life. My buddy Clint is a great example. He would tell me how it is, like straight up. And he thought I was so cool, like he wasn't just criticism, wasn't just, that was, he always appreciated who I was and how I lived my life. And then when he didn't, or he thought I could do better, he let me know, Mom is the same way,
Mom's the same way.
She'll let you know. Yeah. And I always appreciated that.
Yeah. So then another kind of piece to this, I think it was on Ed Milet, talked about momentum is easy downhill. If you're walking downhill, if you're rolling a car downhill that's not running or is running, The momentum is easy. Momentum is hard, headed uphill. Trying to do something new, take on a new task, change your mindset. And, you take one step forward and you're starting to make some progress. And then you take one step upwards. And then as you keep continuing to step upwards, you're starting to make some momentum and you've got your body headed in that direction. It makes it much easier. And then you just keep moving on.
Yeah. I think starting something new is so fun in the beginning because it's all new. And then it's like you're flying to Mount Everest. You got your crew, you got, your Sherpas lined up, you're at the bottom of the mountain, all anticipation. Anticipation to me is like the funnest feeling. Preparing for a trip or preparing for something is so exciting. And then you get to the foot of the mountain, you're like, oh, I have to climb this thing. Doing anything new is like that. You start to, and then you're halfway up the mountain or at base camp or whatever, and you're like, I don't know if I can do this. And you're considering stopping or turning around. It's when you're moving, it's when you're, making progress that I think it's easier because you're so focused on like taking the steps, navigating the route that you're not thinking about, is this hard or should I turn around? I go swimming with these guys at the Y and they all, it's so funny. They all sit on the pool deck for like, they'll sit there for 20 minutes, just like delaying the get in. And I'm like the opposite. I'm like, I walk from the locker room to the pool deck and jump in the pool and start swimming immediately because I can't do that. It's torture.
Yeah, that's 20 minutes of their brain going through that. You really don't need to swim today. I know you're in your suit already, but it's warm right here. Don't get in the water yet. You'll be tired when you get done.
To me, like when I grabbed my suit and left home, I had that conversation I did it then. It's so funny that they're doing it there. And I think it's a culture thing too. Like they were on the swim team. I never grew up swimming, so they would do that. They would sit. Yeah. It's kind of like before you go skateboarding or whatever you do, you can kind of just chum it up before you get in the water. But to me, I'm like, I'm not doing that. I'm not hanging out here. I'm getting in. We talk after in the hot tub.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, you talk about climbing Mount Everest, and you're probably you're gonna make that trip with somebody else. You're gonna have a team for sure that you're gonna be on that trip with, and so you're gonna do that with a crowd of people or a group of people that they're focused. Their mindset is where it should be. You're not going to pick somebody from that team that's going to, not be up for the challenge. And it's the same thing, I think, with mindset. You got to separate yourself from the crowd. If you're in a crowd right now that has, really a negative mindset that's bringing you down, not bringing you up, and you separate yourself from the crowd, you then have to play your part in maybe a new circle and, be great at what you do and join a team of those who are really growth focused. Not easy to do in a lot of people's lives because some of those people might be family. Some of them might be coworkers. It might be that you're on a team, if you're younger or older, I guess it doesn't really matter. Separating yourself from their negative speak is a really hard thing to do. And it doesn't mean that you don't interact with those people. It's the frequency that you interact with them and, have the fierce conversation that says, I don't want to talk that way anymore. I'm not going to listen to your, complaining about this. If you've got a problem, let's figure out a solution. Let's not just harbor on the negative parts of it.
Right. So yeah, you get no brownie points, you get no kudos, or it doesn't count for anything wanting to change. And people are not guaranteed to like your change or your success. Jordan Peterson talks about this, that a lot of your friends are your friends because you are the way you are. If you change, they're not going to want to be your friends anymore, or they're going to try and pull you back down or keep you the way you were. So like you said, it's not that you can't see those people, although you might not be able to, depending on how negative of an influence they are or how much you want to change. And I think we have such a resistance to friend hopping or abandoning our our roots or some loyalty, I don't think that people that really grow and really change care about that as much. Or even if they care about it, they don't let it control them.
Well, they don't let it control them because they can put it in the boxes that it needs to be in.
Right.
And that was another thing that I was listening to. It was Mel Robbins with Lisa Bilyeu. Fascinating conversation. And they were talking about, one thing was generational conditioning. So you're brought up in a family, you're the luckiest person in the world, you're mediocre lucky, or you're the most unlucky person in the world in terms of what that generational conditioning comes from. So you have to take that, your parents or whoever helped bring you up are the ones that, would have that generational conditioning that gets layered onto you. That person might have come from a place of lack and want and financial hardship. So they are constantly going to want to make sure that you're not lacking in the basics of necessity. They're probably going to, they may, if they have the ability, overwhelm you with a lack of scarcity. That could be good or bad. The point is, it doesn't matter. Where they came from is where they came from, and they can't wipe that out from their brains. They can't help but have those feelings. So you, in turn, as a person, a child of that environment, or being influenced by an environment, have to realize where those people are at and accept it, embrace it, and understand that that's how they're going to respond to things. That doesn't mean that that's going to be how you're going to act. You're just understanding where they're coming from. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I can't help who I was brought up with by.
Right.
I can't change any of that.
Right.
It's influenced me in my life. There are some things that I've definitely, gained great confidence and propelled my life with from those experiences. There are other things that I want to do a little bit differently.
Right.
And but I can't erase them. And you also, as the other person, don't know everything about what's inside of me.
Right.
So you can't judge people,
If you want your good idea to get shot down, go tell 5 of your friends. That's what they say. It's like, if every one of your 5 friends that you were going to tell said that's a great idea, it's probably not a good idea, because they would all be doing it or, encouraging you to do it from day one. So if you're really on to something, the people around you have such a small, narrow aperture into your life and what ignites you. And they, people close to you can usually see your talents or see where you thrive. That is such a small amount of information to go off of. So telling people I'm going to do this, or I want to do this, or it's either a bad idea, or you need to really think about who you're telling and what you're telling and how you're telling them. And is that person really the person you should be talking to about that? If you want to talk to someone about property management, owning rental property is a great way to make money. One of the best ways to make money in our country. So much wealth has been built that way. If you want to decide that that's a terrible idea, go tell 5 people that have owned one rental property in their life. Because if they only owned one, they probably didn't do it very well, or they didn't like it, or the problems outweighed the benefits for them. And they will tell you, oh, you're going to be changing toilets at 2 a.m. Well, if that's what you plan on doing, like them, don't own rental property. If you plan on being successful doing it, go talk to 5 people that have owned 20 plus units that are currently doing it, that are building wealth that way, because they'll tell you, you don't have to change toilets at 2 a.m. You can set up systems. This is what you need to do. This is a book you need to read. This is a person you need to know in your area, or 10 people. And so I think it's very important to talk to the right people about the right things. Now, the person you told that learned something about rental property, maybe they went and did something else and found success with, personal income through skills-based whatever. Okay, talk to them about that. Or maybe they became a professional, a lawyer, a doctor. Are you interested in that? Talk to them about that. I think everyone has something to give. It's just don't talk to the wrong person about the thing that didn't work for them.
Right. Yeah. And I think, I loved what you said about, they have no clue. They have no aperture, to what you've experienced. And you got to come to the epiphany that those around us don't think like we do.
Mm.
And they haven't had the same upbringing, the experiences. And you got to use this to enter into curiosity instead of judgment. So when somebody does something or says something and you can't relate to what they're talking about, you have to know that that's coming from someplace different than your understanding. So you got to shift from judgment to curiosity to figure out, what do you mean? The simplest question to help solve what could be a terrible situation is, what do you mean? What are you saying? I don't understand. And even if you think you might, and you're like, that sounds off, if you ask a question, you got a great chance of getting some clarity that's going to be, oh, that's what you mean.
Right.
And don't just ask it once. Sometimes, you got to do some drilling.
Totally. Yeah. What else you got?
Well, I just think all these things, they build your toolbox. You got to have a toolbox full of things that you pull out. And sometimes those things in your toolbox, you've got the old tools that are maybe your old self, or your generational, conditioning that comes in that toolbox. Those might be down lower. They might be a little tarnished, but they're still there. And then you've got the newer things that you're working on now. You've got the shiny new tool that you just bought that you haven't tried out yet. But those are all the toolbox that you got to be able to, it's at the ready. It's good to go. You're always trying to find new tools to make the toolbox so it's fully prepared when you need it.
Yeah. I think it's so important. I was talking to one of my friends, Mitchell, the other day, and he said something. He's had, done such an amazing job in the last 2 years. He works at Shelter Institute, and he's like one of their really great employees. You go in there, he's doing the hard cuts when you're in class. I'm like, I want Mitchell to look at this, he's doing a great job. He was talking about how he's been so lucky. And I was like, I sent him the quote of like, luck is when preparation meets opportunity. And I think it's like you said, having those tools in your toolbox, the more that you build up yourself and your skill. It's like playing a video game or whatever. It's like, even a out of the box game. You're trying to get attributes, you're trying to get resources, you're trying to build your little kingdom, as quickly as you can with as much variety and diversity as you can. And the more that you build skills, I think of all the jobs that you've had, all the jobs that I've had, and how, I might, when I was in some of those roles, I was like, man, what am I doing here? Like, this is never going to help me. How is this going to play a part in what I do? And now it all makes sense, with hindsight. And for you too, looking at your life or anyone, you hear stories about, different celebrities, that were very wealthy people that, did X, Y, or Z. Makes no sense as far as, what they do now, but they'll talk about that experience and how they learned the value of time or the value of the dollar or the value of relationships, or they met this person and that unlocks something for them. And I think it's so important to just like keep pushing on, okay, I'm here right now. Is this where I want to be? Obviously not, because no one's where they want to be. Taking that opportunity and instead of, looking at the grass on the other side of the fence, growing where you're planted, watering what you got, and building skills. Because even though you might not want to be in that industry or in that job, when you get to the next thing, you'll be that much more prepared. Did you learn to lead people where you were? Okay, well, when you get to, whatever promotion or transfer to a different place and they need you to be a leader and you're not because you were like, well, I wasn't where I wanted to be. It's like, okay, well, now you ought to start leading where you're at, or whatever it is, studying at night or, building skills on the side. I think it's so important.
And the whole thing about this toolbox and building your mindset and your skills is, so you can encourage others those people who, who need your success, basically. They need your energy. They feed off of that. And then they might, in turn, from having received that from you, they might then go out and be that
Totally.
same encouragement, energy, light to the world that they could be.
Totally. I was thinking about Mitchell, and he's 20 and very successful at shelter. I was like, I need to somehow figure out how to get a few 17-year-olds, 16-year-olds that, he left Ohio straight out of high school, moved to Maine to work at shelter. I was like, I need to make this kid a poster child for going straight from high school into a interesting job that pays well, that's hard. It's not, making, $250,000 a year to do nothing. It's hard work, but it's rewarding. And he has gone into that and not just been like, oh, this is fun, whatever. He's worked really hard and anticipated his boss or coworkers' needs and, been that guy. And to show kids in high school, like, this is what you need to do. You need to do this right out of high school. Go get a job. Doesn't matter what it is. Mm-hmm. It does matter what it is. However, whatever you're doing, just go all in and go gangbusters.
Do your best.
Make your boss happy. Show up early, leave late, and don't expect anything in return, because you get a promotion not off, doing your job. You get a promotion off of doing other people's jobs too, and filling in gaps and anticipating new venues for whatever.
And the minute you realize, if somebody like that realizes that that is not the job for them, that is when you apply yourself to the highest ability possible. And then you and at the same time, you're letting your person that you're working with, this is not for me, I'm moving on.
Right.
But you finish strong.
And getting a super good reference because you went above and beyond. Yeah. And they're sad to lose you, but they're going to support you in whatever you do because you did extra for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, thinking about this and, why do we do this podcast? The goal is to provide comfort and encouragement, knowing that you have a hope and a future. All of us need to know that we have a hope and a future. And keeping that in mind, people who might be listening, we're at the end of today's event. And if somebody's made it all the way to the end, let's say, what do people want to hear? What particular topics or who might they like to hear from? Share thoughts and ideas with us. We'd like to make this so that more people will listen. And the intent is to encourage as many as we can along the way. And if you like what you hear, subscribe to the podcast.
Yeah. And people can share it too. And if people need help learning how to share, they don't know how to copy a link, or they don't know how to share on Facebook or Instagram or whatever they're doing, we are happy to help you to just reach out, send us an email or a text if you have Rick's number or mine, and we can help you to send it. Even if we're sending it to the person you want to send it to, we're happy to do that.
Yeah. So, you're either watching this on YouTube or any of the podcast channels, and from there, there'll be a way to connect with us in the show notes and whatnot. So follow that way. And you can always email us. You can email me at rick@bissonrealestate.com.
Yep. Awesome.
Okay. Great.
Thanks, Dad.
Thank you. Love you, guys.
Love you too.